So again, welcome to Inner Fitness, and our topic today, I believe, is teamwork. Great sports word, teamwork. So first we'll start with a bit of a reflection, if that's okay. These moments when I can sit quietly and have quality time with the self are very precious. Yes, these days we have lots of time with ourselves, but quality time can still be quite rare. Time when I can go into a quiet space inside and experience the quality of the self. I do that now. Like an actor stepping off stage, I start to withdraw inside. Feel myself like a tide that is waning, starting to move away from the shore of day-to-day life. All the roles, responsibilities, and just the habituated activity. Feel it receding into the background of my awareness. And just a single light coming into the foreground, filling my attention. And that single light is me. The very essence of who and what I am. I am life. I am what makes this body move. The energy that animates this body. And this body is an incredible machine of movement. But what fills the activity with quality is me, the being, the one moving this vehicle of expression, the body. Quality is my responsibility in this partnership with the body, this teamwork with the body. The body might be walking, but if it walks patiently or peacefully, that's because of me, the being. I am the keeper of qualities in this partnership. I hold the key. And when I forget myself, when the only focus is on the body, the activity, it feels the quality disappears, just quantity is left. Results, outcomes, comparing, competing. But when I remember myself, the key of remembrance, the qualities are unlocked and come to the forefront. Yes, I might be making a meal, for example, but am I filling it with those feelings of care and love and patience? Only if I, the being, am fully present, not lost in the actions. We're a powerful team, me and the body. But it's time for me to come into the forefront of that partnership, putting quality first. Only then is there quality of life. Om Shanti. So warm welcome to all again. And a reminder, our focus is teamwork. So pretty obvious what ideas come up when we think about sports or physical activity, but we'll throw it out because you always have such good answers. What, just on the physical level, just on the physical, not getting into the spiritual yet, when we talk about teamwork, what are we talking about? It doesn't even need to be a sport. It could be in the workplace, many different things. When we talk about teamwork, what are we talking about? What comes to mind? You can type in the chat, or if you're open to unmuting, you can speak as well.
Open to each other's ideas.
Sorry?
He said, being open to each other's ideas.
Being open to each other's ideas. Great. Working together with respect. Hema. That was Sangeeta.
Also, so in team, we don't expect everyone to be the same, right? Because one person's strength is on the other person's weakness. Another person's weakness is somebody's strength. So that's how the team works, right? So sometimes it happens like we expect other person to know as much as I do, but that's not going to happen because that's why it's called team.
So respecting everyone has their specialities.
Yeah.
And having the gift to not focus on the weaknesses of someone, but to really focus on those specialities and cultivate, use them for the team. Any other thoughts?
And in team, there is no one person's success and failure. It's always a team failure and team success.
Right. So
somebody
really
cannot take a credit or somebody cannot be blamed for the failure or success, right?
Right. That really, I think that feeling actually helps to liberate the specialities. There isn't that heaviness, if you will. I've had a few circumstances lately where I really got to witness this teamwork, and it's a very long-standing tradition in this organization. So we'll look at a few examples from the Brahma Kumaris, but just some worldly examples, a couple, and both of them had to do with first aid responding, actually, which is ironic. The first was at the scene of a car accident. It was very interesting. The first to arrive was fire department, fire. And they are a well-oiled team, let me tell you, probably because their life depends on it. And I remember, even though I didn't know obviously each one's role or anything, or even who was the leader, because there tends to be someone who is coordinating. But it became clear, very, very clear, quickly. And it wasn't the oldest one. In fact, he might have been the youngest one who was the captain, if you will, of that team. And I really enjoyed. We have another one from Sangeeta, complementary to each other. Beautiful. We'll come to that in a moment as well. I really enjoyed watching them because they were older. I could tell they were older, more experienced firemen on this team. For that particular call or shift, this young one was the captain, and he was making the decisions, coordinating, but he would listen to the others, take into account what they were saying, and then he'd make a decision, and they all respected what decision he had made. It was quite, even if it didn't necessarily agree with what they had suggested, they respected it. I found it absolutely amazing to watch. It was just a tiny sliver in time, but it was really powerful to watch this. And the second one was when I was having some first aid training, and we were doing something called log rolling, practicing this maneuver called log rolling, which you may or may not know about. This is when you have, you suspect there might be a spinal, and so you have to stabilize what's called the C-spine or the top of the spine, and then you're trying to roll. Usually it's to get a platform underneath the casualty, but obviously we don't have the equipment, but just practicing what that would look like. And the amount, I mean, you want to keep the spine intact, not moved. So how well you have to work together is insane. And so we're all sitting there in position, and there is always one person who kind of has to take that role of coordinating, but the feeling of respect of working with equals. And so we're all ready, and he's looking to see if we're all ready, and he's trusting our experience, and then he'd count us in and say, okay, now, and we'd roll, and then he'd tell us when to go. It was quite fascinating, this level of teamwork. It was quite enjoyable. So obviously we see this a lot in sports, that very often if souls aren't working together as a team, they could be all superstars, super gifted, but they still might lose if they can't work together. So you can think of a superstar basketball team, and this is often the argument when they have these superstar kind of in hockey, etc. They pick all of these star players from different teams and throw them together into some super team. But have they had the chance to really bond together as a team, or is it a bunch of individual stars kind of skating together on the ice? So it compromises the quality of the performance if they don't take that time to come together as a team. And I was remembering this, I know I've talked about before, but in relay racing, this was huge. I've done a few team sports, and relay was one of them. And, again, there's some countries that have their relay teams picked far ahead of the competition, and they get that chance to practice and bond together. And there's other countries, what they choose to do is during the actual sport event, they'll see which ones score highest in the 100 meters, and they'll pick those ones as the 4x100. So they've not had a chance to work together. They're just thrown together at the last second. Their transitions are a nightmare to watch. And even though they might be the fastest people on the planet, they still may not win because they're not working together as a team. So it's huge, this teamwork. And it's funny what I think Sangeeta had mentioned about complementing, because very often we might think, and it's connected to many things shared already about different specialities, but we might think the best teams are where they're very similar or like-minded. And actually it's been shown the opposite is true, that they don't have to be similar or even like-minded, agree, but they have to have one thing: respect for each other. then the best performance comes out. So when I worked at one organization, we used to have I'm sure many have this, a team building day, and different things. One day we had to go curling, which was very fun because I've never curled before in my life. So you get a crash course in curling, and then away you go, and it was absolutely wonderful and comical. But one time we had team building, which I remember to this day and found extremely enjoyable. We already worked together well, but this really enhanced and I think deepened the concept of team. There was respect, but it also gave understanding, recognition of each other, which is huge. And because oddly enough, we very often, although we might appreciate, we're very quick to see the weaknesses of others. And very often what that means is, that's not how I operate. That's not the way I do things. I'm right. And anything else is weak and wrong. So in this particular instance, it was around color typing, personality typing. I know many have done that. There was 4 different colors or personality types. I think we were a team of about 7 or 8, maybe 7 at that time. So there was gold, which was very much into responsibility and doing things the right way, the right systems and structures and policies. Very, very organized, really like to do things the right way. So we had a couple of souls on the team that scored highly, and they were paired together. And then we had the greens, and the greens are the visionaries. They're very task-oriented or realizing that vision. They're obviously quite brilliant as visionaries, but they tend not to be too much or don't seem to focus. They're probably aware, but don't seem to focus too much on the people aspect, more the projects, the vision, the ideas. So big, big thinkers. And all of our upper management were all in that area. So it was very interesting. The 3 of them were together. And then there was orange. I liked orange very much. I was not orange. I was blue, which I'll come to. But orange was outside the box thinkers. They struggle incredibly. Unlike gold, they don't get systems and structures. They're innovative thinkers, outside the box, extremely creative. If they don't get the point of something, they can't do it. So that we had 1 orange on our team, and then there was, I scored in a few, but I chose to go with blue, which is very people. People are the main thing. Doesn't matter what else is going on, but are the people okay? And blues tend to be chameleons. Because the people are so important, they can become a green if they're around greens, or become an orange because they can really accommodate people, come to where people are at. So we were given a task on our teams, which was a toolkit. And in the toolkit was a bunch of different stuffs like tissue paper, pipe cleaners, pens, all sorts of things. And the only instruction we were given was alone, if you're alone or in your group, do whatever you want with this toolbox. That was it. So away we went. Myself, the blue, the first thought was, how can I prepare this toolbox for the next person who's going to use it? So how can I make this toolbox a good experience for the next person? So I was able to organize everything. There was tissue paper inside and stuff. So I then gift wrapped it and put a bow on it. And I was done in about 10 minutes. The golds got nowhere with their toolbox because they spent the whole time starting to create a system to organize the inventory in that toolbox. So their entire time was spent just coming up with an inventory system. And golds do tend to take a little longer to get things completed because they're doing everything according to the book. They've always, if you want to know about any policies on anything, go to a gold. They've got it memorized. So their whole time was meant taking inventory of everything in their toolbox. That was their time spent. The greens were fascinating. I had a lot of time to watch everyone because I was done. The greens fascinated me because you know, the greens, they're project people, they're vision, they have a vision, you know, and this was a very creative team, communication. So these are extremely creative people. And so all of them got their pipe cleaners out and started to create pipe cleaner people, figures. And I'd be sitting there watching them, just absolutely fascinated, because the idea of hurting someone's feelings or asking, they're not cruel or anything. It just literally, they assume competence. So they will not be offended if you say something negative to them. They simply won't be offended. They feel it's for the task. They're fascinating people. So I'm watching them together, and like one would be working on their pipe cleaner and kind of put down to look, and the one beside them, without asking, would grab it in order to take it to the next level and do some things to it and put it. And they thought, oh, okay. And that no one was offended when they started, intruding on their creations. It was fascinating to watch the greens, fascinating. And then the orange, bless their heart, they have the toughest time. The first thing they say is, this is a stupid exercise. They usually get up and leave the room, which is what our orange started to do. They just don't get the point. Like, they're the ones that will notice the elephant in the room. They're great. So we all did our thing. It was fascinating. And I think we came away, obviously, with a very enriched understanding of each other. It only deepened our respect when we got to see how we worked and we could understand why the golds need that extra time, or why the orange, their attention is constantly wandering around. We totally could get it and realized their specialities. And what we were told is that we had a very strong team because there was this diversity. It brings so much. If we can respect each other, it brings so much to the performance of the team. So diversity is great. They complement each other. It was wonderful. Within the Brahma Kumaris, this ironically was something that was brought up in a class this morning. There is so much teamwork going on. In fact, it is the point of everything we do. Usually you think about spirituality and teamwork doesn't really come to mind. You often think of people going off in isolation in a cave, deep tapasya meditation, like, I want to be alone. They love this time. They get to be alone in solitude. It's teamwork. They might think of forming a team with God, and that's certainly important. But the idea of spirituality and teamwork, I don't, it doesn't usually go together. But it's actually the point. At least with Raj Yoga, it's the point, is becoming such a master of the self, then I'm actually able to contribute to a healthy community. I can take responsibility for myself, cultivate the specialities of the self, and become a really powerful component in the community. And of course, there's so much focus on emerging self-respect in order for ego to melt. Because if there's anything that's going to destroy teamwork, which means the task is going to be threatened, it's going to be ego. Whether it's on the side of arrogance, that I can get these things done and these other people are nimble, idiots around me, or the other side of ego is, I'm not sure if I'm really a valuable member of the team. So not really feeling comfortable to contribute. Both of these are ego, and it's a loss for the task if either of them are present. And we've seen examples of this happening. I remember once in dance school, we would have these dance competitions, and sometimes it was individual and often it was group, and the group were just remarkable. And I was watching one, and it was a ballet group dance. I think it was the age range below my age, so I could watch it. And these were super talented young ballerinas, super talented, but they had to kind of work together. The idea here wasn't to solo, but to provide a total experience through working together. It was a group dance. And there was one dancer on the team who I knew. I mean, bless her heart, she was lovely, but she really struggled a lot with not being the soloist. With just so there was one moment in the choreography where they all stand in this beautiful diagonal line, and they do this thing called a side développé with their leg. They extend the leg to the side, and the idea is that the legs be the same height to create this very nice visual experience that they all. And it was understood by everyone. In rehearsals, they do it. But the moment they got on the stage, you see them going to the side développé, and all of them are, except for one. One's up here. so it totally destroyed. Even though that soul looked quite talented, it completely destroyed the effect, the total effect of the task, the performance. So it can get really challenging if ego is there rather than self-respect. Without self-respect, there cannot be respect for others. So with this organization, there's so many, from the get-go, so many examples of beautiful collaboration and teamwork. And I almost feel it is souls working together that really demonstrate what spirituality is. Not in isolation, it's powerful too, but actually working together that demonstrates that really the power, what's possible through spirituality. So a few examples were coming to mind. One was one that's shared by one of the older senior brothers. When he came, he was a very, very high-ranking business, international consultant, very important clients, really high status in the corporate world, lots of experience, worldly experience. And he came into one of the BK centers, and as drama would have it, the teacher that was assigned to him was almost the exact opposite in terms of where he was at in his life. It was a young woman, very little worldly experience, I think very, very early 20s, if that. Perhaps not extremely confident in speaking, and that's often where it starts with, is with one-on-ones. So it's comfortable. So she's giving the course, and he, as he's used to doing when he's like a shark that sniffs fresh meat or something. He thought, there's a target here. So he starts to really attack her, not in an abusive way, but just firing questions at this soul, just questioning everything that she's saying. And what about this? And I don't get this. And what do you mean by this? And tons of questions, just question. And she starts to get very confused and overwhelmed, and eventually breaks down in tears. And I mean, this is obviously something he knew about himself, and why he was there is he doesn't particularly like being that way, but it was deeply ingrained through his professional capacity. So she breaks down in tears, and the brother who coordinates the center obviously heard this and came into the room, totally ignored the student, the man who had come, and put all of his attention on the young woman and just really comforted her, made sure she was okay. Of course, the students seeing, they watch it, hey, what about me? I'm the one who's being served here. And like, what about me? But he's watching it. He's watching this incredible respect and support. And that moment is when he got the lesson. Is that moment of watching how this organization works together is when he actually understood spirituality. So I often think it's how we work together. It's such a very beautiful and precious thing in today's world. You know, we often say, oh, I'm fine on my own. It's just when I have to come and work with other people that things get all mucky-muck. And, you know, in today's world, there's so much competition or insecurity or comparing or competing or reactivity or sensitivity, and to have really healthy, you know, interactions and relationships. And this incredible, we see it in children sometimes, they call it play, but somehow it disappears as purity goes. That concept to just be light together goes as well. And it's very connected to that glue of respect or purity seems to disappear. And then we look at the senior students, the leading students in this organization, and they are such examples of teamwork. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So we're reminded of two examples this morning. The first, whose picture is way over there, so I can't grab it for you, but was the partnership, and there's many. I mean, this soul who you see behind me, Mama, was really working incredible partnership with Brahma Baba, who was the first administrative head. But the one I'm thinking of is when Brahma Baba passed away, or as we say, left the body, transitioned to his next birth, rather than one soul, I mean, Dadi Prakashmani was definitely willed with that idea of spiritual head, but there was actually two. It was very interesting about Dadi Prakashmani, who followed Brahma Baba as spiritual head, because she wasn't the most experienced or the oldest. I'm sure, there was probably a few choices, but there was a reason in the drama that soon became clear in terms of her specialities. But she was now put in this position of many older students, many more experienced students, and how would she be able to develop that culture of teamwork with students who might be questioning what she was doing in that leadership role? And it was all about respect. But she tended to, there was two co-administrative heads, which has become the tradition in this. There's always two co-administrative heads. One is the one that's really, we say, the face, but there's always two that are actually working together. And those two were Dadi Prakashmani and Didi Manmohini. And it has been said that the level of teamwork they had was such that souls would say it's almost like one brain being shared between two bodies. Like they just, and it's not that they were identical. They were very, very different. Very different in terms of their leadership style, in terms of their approach to regulating or, policies, very, very different. And yet, because of that depth, each one had a depth of spirituality, a lot of spiritual effort, and they had deep, deep regard for each other. It was almost like a mom and dad. It was sort of like they'd come to one and they say, well, what did Daddy G say? Or they go to the other one, well, what did Didi say? Whatever Didi said. So they just had incredible respect. It's quite remarkable to watch. I wish I had, it's all the way upstairs, the picture. They're just the sweetest things to see together. So that was, but I learned of another partnership that I wasn't so aware was there. I assumed it was. I've seen them together, but it was really beautiful to hear. And that was with our just previous leader, Dadi Jenki, who passed away. It's almost 1 year ago. We're coming up to the anniversary, March 27th. I can't believe it's a year. Yes, she passed away at the beginning of the pandemic. Dadi Jenki and Dadi Gulzar, who is the current administrative head. And the partnership between them, again, because they had so much respect, even though Dadi Jenki was recognized as the spiritual head, when it came to the day-to-day, she would really consult with Dadi Gulzar a lot. And Dadi Gulzar didn't have much input. She's quite into that silence, that introversion, complete trust. But that gesture of respect, of, let me ask Dadi Gulzar, it's the reason to me this organization is still standing, despite so many obstacles and opposition, is because of that purity, that deep respect, really pure feelings between each other. It's like gold. And it's really kind of something that is in the atmosphere, the culture. So whether or not you want to, you start to absorb it. You start to feel it. And it's really remarkable. There's so many opportunities to work on teams. And what I love in a spiritual organization working on teams is you get to focus on the teamwork and not the project or the outcome, knowing that that will happen. It will work out very well. Yes, there's details that need to be done, but the most important thing is what's happening between each other. As we say, people before projects. The outcome depends so completely on what's going on inside. That's for an individual as well as for a team. So this wonderful opportunity to come together, thrown together, and now with the online environment, I find myself thrown together with people I never was thrown together with before, because there's that. The only thing that might be an obstacle is time zones. You know, it's like I can't join this team because although there's one team I'm on, it doesn't matter. There's so much love that I'll wake up at 3 a.m. to be on that team with that team to make adjustments. So, but there is just incredible opportunity to be thrown together with a new set of souls. And what's so beautiful is because we are all in the spiritual organization, we know, we trust that everyone puts that respect as the first priority. It's sort of an unwritten code or feeling, more important than anything else. So then someone might ask, well, what about when you have partnerships with souls outside the organization? And that happens a lot. Just the last few days, found myself involved with something that involved what we call, outside partners as well. And because of the understanding of what cultivates respect, it's very easy to apply to any situation. I use it at my physical workplace, these partnerships with outside organizations, the same rules apply. And it's a very interesting concept in spirituality that one can, with their attitude, create an atmosphere. It even works online. The term atmosphere, the English word, has this base, this foundation of the term Atma. So it's the sphere around the Atma, or the soul, the atmosphere. My attitudes, which are based on my consciousness, my awareness, how I see things, create an atmosphere, a vibration. And it's amazing when we have spiritual attitudes, seeing others as souls, knowing everyone is a child of the Supreme Soul. It's remarkable how that instantly creates an atmosphere. Even if souls are coming with different agendas and out, they kind of start to feel that vibration. And remember, there was a point in this latest partnership, sometimes I would only meet the person when we're live, real time. And there was one soul, she was a musician, and I enjoyed it so much because her t-shirt, I was just meeting her for the first time as she played, said, "Good vibes only." I was trying to pay attention because I kept reading "good vibes only." I thought, oh my gosh, that's such a good t-shirt. Her music was absolutely beautiful. And it was so easy because when she played, it really felt like she went to this very vulnerable spiritual place when she played. It felt like it took everything. She was giving everything of herself through her music. And I remember listening to her play, and, I thought, okay, it's electronic violin, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure about electronic music. It's interesting. But this was absolutely stunning, absolutely stunning. And it was so easy for everyone to have that sense of an atmosphere because she came into the gathering with those good vibes only, with that vulnerability, just revealing the very essence of who she was through her music, created this really beautiful atmosphere that we could all, even though we're thrown together for the first time, we could all live while the program's running, we could all cooperate and work together as a team very, very easily. It was quite a wonderful experience to see how the atmosphere, the added spiritual attitudes in any situation, even in a second, on the phone, doing a call with a service person, to experience them. Yes, this is a soul, a brother soul, that really, I mean, the eternal relationship between us, a child of God, to have those feelings, they will come through, obviously, in your voice, those feelings, and really touch the soul. And immediately you'll feel like you're working together as a team. Because very often when it's like a service call, the feeling is, they just want my money. Or they just, want it for but that is completely melted. Outcomes melt when I can genuinely come into the interaction with those atmic feelings, that spiritual attitude, and create that atmosphere. It creates such a pure glue between us, such pure feelings. And so then we're in what we call a win-win scenario. We think about teams, and we always used to, I always found it very odd that one team would be in their locker room over here and the other team's in their locker room over here, and they both are beseeching God, I hope, help my team to win. Now, what's God? It's putting God in a very awkward situation, isn't it? And because both teams are asking God, be on our side. And God's like, well, I can't be on only one side. I'm rooting for you. I'm supporting you both. So I always found that very odd, very questionable. But when we watch children play, again, that purity, they're not even to winning. They're just playing. It's a win-win for everyone. And to be able to come into different scenarios where it's not, I want to gain at the expense of someone else, but just how can we both experience benefit in this situation? So very, very spiritual attitudes create this culture of working together, of teamwork. It can happen in a second. To me, it is the strength of an organization and not just a spiritual one. And yes, the most powerful team is between the soul and the Supreme Soul, God. That if I can develop that partnership, Daddy Genki used to be seen as a companion of God, that she always had God as her companion. You could tell she was always connected to that being. And so she really felt we're such a powerful team. He's kind of the one that's responsible. He's making things happen. I get to be the instrument of that one. And what was achieved through that soul as a result, we'd need a few more hours to do that storytelling, because it's absolutely remarkable what that soul achieved, what was possible through that soul because of her teamwork with God. It's mind-boggling what she accomplished, say, in London. Mind-boggling. So there's so much power in that team effort. As they say, the sum is much more than the parts, if there is that purity. Very pure relationship, very spiritual. So I'm looking at the time. I'm going to stop there. I might have put you all to sleep. I have no idea. But I do want to check in, see if there's anything you want to share or add or ask. It's your chance. It's very quiet out there.
Judy Ben.
Yes.
So I'm constantly working in a team, and the team I'm working in and the projects I'm on, they're the most challenging team as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are instances like, people are trying to, because I know I'm a spirit, and I know they are spirit as well, but they don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I am trying my best to practice my soul consciousness. Okay, they are soul, I am a soul, playing the part and everything. But there are instances like, it's just get over your head. You just have to say something. Otherwise, they will drag you down so badly. That, I mean, we can't even imagine. I'm saying that is completely non-spiritual. I understand that, but it's just like getting over it. It's very hard, because last week I had a very very, very different experience. Like, we were in a team, and young girl is now in the team. She's working as a coordinator, and I mean, she may be in her mid-20s and all. And like, it's a completely different conversation now. Project manager has changed. Like, I mean, he's going to go to some other program as well, but I mean, for now, he's like completely acting in a different way and all. And at some point of time, I just had to tell him that it is so disrespectful, the way you are saying things and the way you are behaving, right? And with all respect, I said that it's very disrespectful. And he said that I'm taking it as an offense. I said, you are taking it as an offense? I was really surprised. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying, it sometimes it's very, very challenging nowadays, because it's a survival for the fittest. I always want to prove myself that I'm better than others, right? If I don't do that, I mean, I don't know where I'll be tomorrow. So that, and I know, like, I'm not in competition with any one of them. I'm out of that. I said, I'm out of this race. I'm not in competition, but still, right, like, sometimes it happens.
I think the first thing always is, I think, mastering this in these very practical scenarios and workplace scenarios is a complete learning curve. But your sharing is reminding me of a story we heard this morning. I don't know if you heard it as well, but about Dee Dee, because she was quite strong in saying things, in correcting souls, saying what she felt needed to be said. And I love this story this morning about there were some souls that weren't really waking up for early morning meditation, and she wanted to, it was a concern because she knew that they would not get full benefit and that their task would suffer, the team would suffer. So she got a couple of the sisters to dress up as Matajis, put veils on their heads so they couldn't be recognized, and go and tour around and see who's sleeping through early morning meditation. And so, the brothers would be a little surprised when these mothers showed up at their quarters, and it was a very funny story. So, they were able to determine who was really, it also because when we say that people are acting this way, it's actually the number one soul who suffers is themselves. If we act in ways that undermine our dignity, our true self. And so she called them in, and the first thing she did was, how is the task going? And you had good breakfast. Very, very sweet, very loving. And then she'd go on to say what she needed to say. And yes, sometimes things need to be said. Why she did it that way is for a couple of reasons. It obviously helps the soul to prepare to hear what needs to be said, but also for her own self, because we're often asked when things need to be said, corrections given, or things identified, elephants in the room. Is that, if you're saying your teamwork and relationship and loving, I mean, where has that work? And yeah, sometimes things do need to be said, definitely. But what we saw with Dee Dee or any of the seniors is they'd always first check the stage that they're going to speak from. Because I can say something needs to be said, otherwise I'm going to get, totally used as a doormat or run over, whatever. It's like, okay, but you will not be successful in just saying something. If it isn't said, and very often what happens is things build up until I'm like a volcano. And then I say something because something has to be said. But now I'm in the worst possible state to say something and expect it to have any long-term effects, because I'm frustrated and overwhelmed and upset, or whatever the case may be. To be able to say things in a way where I'm almost detached from whether or not, after I say it, if things don't change, it's okay. To be in that kind of stage actually makes things happen. Because souls are very, very sensitive. Even when they appear insensitive, they're actually very sensitive to vibes. And when I say something that perhaps needs to be said, but I say it from a place of irritation or anger or impatience or whatever, although the words can be beautiful, articulate and clear and accurate, and we might say right, what is loudest is the vibration. Souls will hear that. And so it won't really, even though I said it's something that needs to be said, it won't. And then you sort of see down the road how it unfolds. It's an art. For the sake of the team, it's really an art to be able to say what needs to be said, correct or whatever, from such really a sweet place, if you will, that the correction actually moves things forward rather than takes things back. It's really an art, and I've met some souls who have mastered the art, and they always have a lot of self-respect and a lot of contentment. Can you imagine giving a correction from a content place? Not a discontent place, but a content place. Because when I give it from a content place, then the soul doesn't feel, oh my gosh, they're giving this thing, they're upset with me. They don't feel any of that. They feel the relationship still intact, which is often why we can take correction from what we say friends, souls that we really trust and know that they love us no matter what. We can take corrections from them. I've had souls come up to me and say, please tell me if I'm doing something crazy. And I'm like, maybe. If they say, no, I want to know, I can take it really. Like, maybe. But to be able to give that correction from a contented place is magic, is powerful. So powerful, because usually we're from a discontented place. And it temporarily will seem to change things. But in the long run, it doesn't actually hold up. The feelings even might be very, very changed. So I'm not saying it's an easy thing. It deserves an hour or more to go into what you've brought up, Pema. It's an art, and I feel that I've seen it in the Brahma Kumaris, and right now, given the times we're in, many seniors or senior students, although they see a lot of interesting things going on, they have a lot of good wishes, pure feelings. They give correction through those feelings. And they might, if necessary, give a signal or even verbal, but then they let it go, because so much needs to happen on the part of the soul as well. But to maintain, I always say, if you're going to say something or correct, just build up a bank of really good feelings first and then speak. Rather than, I'm really frustrated and discontent and I'm at the end of my rope. And that's unfortunately usually where we allow it to get to, is that volcano state. And then we speak. And it's like so confusing for the soul who's receiving, and it's kind of a bit of a mess. So I'm not saying it's easy, but it is really effective in terms of the idea of the team. It allows those feelings to maintain. You might say, yeah, but you don't know, these people are really crazy and bad and competitive and insane. They're still souls, and they're still children of God. And though that awareness, if I'm really doing it, if I'm really there in that reality of, we're all just actors in this incredible thing of life, if I've really gone there, it naturally creates feelings. It's a bit like, I remember once watching a parent. Parents have so much love for their children. And the child was doing all sorts. The child was sitting on their lap and doing all sorts of crazy things, like, this with their eye to the parent, pulling their eyelids around and doing this and crazy, and the parent's just talking to me through it all. And the child is on the parent, pulling them apart. And the parent's like, no. And I'm thinking, what if someone else was sitting on your lap doing that? But because of the relationship, and then the parent might say, Tommy, it's very sweet what you're doing, but if you can stop for just a moment while mommy talks to this person, and the child's okay. So without that kind of glue in between, and I can create that glue if I genuinely go into those feelings, no matter how crazy and extreme, and I enjoy my solitude time, but these fascinating interactions with people, and they all have their different parts they're playing and roles and different ideas of how to go about things. And the only thing that saves me is that vision of, they're all children of God. Not saying, well, they have a lot of ego. Yes, we all have a lot of ego. Trust me. So, yes, we all do. This to me is the vision that is going to save us all, is we're all children of God. I'll just end by sharing very briefly this event recently. And I was I didn't know how this was going to work, because it had storytellers who have gone through very extreme situations. One was a Holocaust survivor, and the other one was the daughter of a colored person who had gone through a lot of segregation challenges. And I thought, oh, okay, this could get very heavy, especially listening to the Holocaust survivor. I was so touched by their story. Yes, it started out, as you would expect, atrocities that we can't imagine. And then the story continued, and it got to where I have to see everyone as a child of God. I have to. That's where their story arrived. So it's really powerful when you see the power of that kind of vision. I say little, they're not little when we're going through them, but relatively speaking to Holocaust, I mean, just where the story started, after 2 seconds, after 3 days in the concentration camp, for no reason whatsoever, I saw a soldier pull a gun and shoot my father dead in front of me. So that's 3 seconds into the story. So the stuff in the workplace seems like small stuff after I hear that. And you listen to the story unfold, most of his family killed, listen to the story unfold. Where it arrives at is his deep love for the biggest team called humanity, and what he will have to do in himself to be able to help that biggest team called the human race. He says, I have to see everyone. They have their parts. I have to see everyone as a child of God. It was extremely powerful. It's very easy for me to sit comfortably and say this and this theoretically, but when you see that a soul has done this work on themselves through really impossible, I'm like, yes, it is possible. It is possible. In the face of incredible difficulty and challenge, it is possible. So it's something to reflect on. We're given so much spiritual knowledge, and ultimately we use it always first on ourselves. Give the oxygen mask to yourself first. But the vision is always these wonderful opportunities that I get to experiment. What have I accumulated inside? I'll never know in isolation. It's very easy in isolation to be peaceful. I'll never really know what I've accumulated inside spiritually until I come into interaction. And I don't mean interaction by I'm with people who act the way I want them to, because that doesn't really tell me a lot either. I really get to know when I'm interacting with people that are just so unique, so different styles. And I love the way they describe the daddies. is that they were all so different, but their harmony was up here. It's not that they were all the same. They're very, very different styles. So it's thought-provoking, really, really thought-provoking about, as a member of teams, those interactions. I'm really, this sport called spirituality, I get to test drive it in those interactions. And they always give me valuable feedback, so much valuable feedback. So then I can see, okay, this is what I need to work on within myself. And I know souls here are dealing with very challenging situations that I cannot possibly say that, okay, I know how you feel. I can't, you know. But we all have this opportunity to work with this spiritual knowledge and see where have I gotten with it all? Where have I gotten with it all? So thought-provoking. I think this is something, when we talk about interactions, that deserves a lot more time to think about. But we've run out of time. But I appreciate what you brought up, Hema, and I think it's really thought-provoking, because sometimes in the spiritual study, things can stay a little bit theoretical, and then when we have to hit the ground, it's like, oh man, this is intense. So how do we convert all of those spiritual treasures into practical things where I can keep my stage in a good place, and also maybe create a forum, a quiet incognito forum that brings out something different or the best in others too. That's part of
we did create the resilience for sure. It's not that we did create resilience, but there is a point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if somebody is poking you 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and 5th time, it's a wow.
Yeah.
I have to speak out. Otherwise, it's going beyond
and again, there's no problem in speaking out. That's not what we're suggesting. That's not what spirituality says. Is to stay quiet. Not at all. It's fine to communicate. It's actually it's one of the 16 arts of life is communication. But if I want that communication to move things forward, rather than just I am reacting against, but if I really want it to move things forward, what is the art of communication? You know, in terms of something effective, because it would be horrible if you say something and A, nothing happens, and even worse, B, people now have a certain attitude towards you. So now I've gotten further back, right? So how do I communicate such that that communication is effective in moving things forward? And that, I think, is a whole topic, a very important. That's why it's one of the big arts of life, is communication. I'm certainly not discounting the scenario you've described. I think it's a classic and important one to explore, because we all encounter it, and we just tend to call it conflict resolution, and there's lots and lots of books and teachings on conflict resolution. But it's interesting to look at what is the spiritual contribution to that idea of communication.
Correct.
How does that work so that it's effective is really what we're looking at. But definitely, things need to be said, and often people won't say things, and it's just kind of becoming intolerable inside. So that's not good either, right? So what is that way of communicating such that it moves things forward? That, to me, is the question. Yes, Raj. I love the way you put your hand up.
I just want to kind of commend Hema Ben for asking this question. And I loved your answer that communication is an art, that if you are going to, say something, then, it has to be said without being disturbed. But most of the time, we develop so much disturbance inside.
Yeah.
Hema Ben, I am probably 10 times luckier than you. Like, it's just, I have a family member which is very dysfunctional. it always tests my patience, right? I consider that person as my biggest teacher. But, it's just like, I know as soon as the other person opens their mouth, it's just like my mind gets disturbed because there's no glue, the one you mentioned, the teacher, the mother and the kid. There's a lot of glue of love. So that's why they could handle. But if there's nothing, then it kind of creates disturbance. And, it's just like if I feel like saying something, but I know my mind is disturbed. So I kind of train my mind. If I can't be peaceful by giving my feedback, I shouldn't say that. So I try not to say something. I try to kind of, do my part. And as soon as I'm done my part, I remove myself from that situation.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a solution or anything, but I just want to emphasize it, that we always deal with dysfunctional people, no matter where we live. So there's no need to kind of, be, kind of so sad about it. But it's just like they're all our teachers. They're trying to teach us the art of communication, art of thinking, so that, someday we could be not disturbed. We could be like a teacher and, give our feedback in a loving way instead of, making other person your enemy.
Yeah, no, thank you, Raj. And thank you, Hema. This is probably one of the top topics that come up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whenever we do a retreat, at the end of it, and then they ask, well, what about this scenario? It's always these kinds of scenarios. Always.
But
sorry, Hema, go ahead. Were you saying something, Hema?
No, sorry, Julian. No, thank you. Thank you, Raj. Sister Raj, thank you.
It's literally one of the top scenarios that come up is this. It's fascinating that that when we're alone, it's good. When we're around people who do operate as we like, it's good. But then, and I just want to say that I'm sure that I am dysfunctional and irritating to other people. So, what is that? What is that? It's like to one person. So it's always from. So it's a fascinating topic, and I think, as we reflect on it, I think we'll each come up with ideas. I am remembering, I'm aware of the time, so if you need to leave, please do. But I'm remembering one soul describing a scenario they were in their workplace. And they noticed that a soul who'd come onto the team, they could see very clearly that they irritated everyone. And that they just really had a lot of arrogance and just really irritated everyone. And it was very interesting what began to happen because the soul who was witnessing this and part of the team, I think they had taken up knitting or something. And they noticed there was something magical about knitting. It was very odd. But they'd be sitting there knitting and everyone would just come and talk to them in a different way. It was almost like there was this atmosphere around them. And they sit there and go, yes, please do. Please do. This is so over time. Thank you for coming. Leave if you need to. Absolutely. So they're sitting there knitting, and it created this maternal atmosphere, obviously, but they would go, yeah, and they would just listen. Yeah. Okay. So this one soul who was having difficulty with, everyone was having difficulty with, they found themselves gravitating towards this person who would be knitting. And they would talk to them. And what started to come is things like, I don't know why I am so horrible when I'm around other people. I don't want to be that way. It's not me. I don't want to be that. I don't know what happens. And they go, And they really didn't say much, but they created this atmosphere that was safe. And this is the whole, forgive me for using this word, but the bartender effect is that you divulge things because it's safe. This is a non-judging listener. It's so powerful when we're in a space that melts ego. So this is God's secret weapon, actually, is that we come to that being and we don't have to put our ego up. And if we do, we will have difficulty connecting. But they just found and the relationship that developed between them was so fascinating and really supported that soul, because what they began to notice is the speciality, yes, he was still very arrogant and irritating, but people started to notice, yeah, he's arrogant and irritating, but you know what? If I was stuck somewhere with a flat tire, he'd be the first one I'd call, because he would give the shirt off his back to help a team player. They all started to notice, and we very often focus on what's wrong, and we totally miss what's right. All of us have things that are wrong with ourselves, and people can see them so clearly, and we may not see them. This soul was lucky. They knew this about themselves. But and this is the thing, is that if I can, before I go in, if I can start to spend a little bit of my time not going over and over, they always do this, they always do this, they always do this, the wrong thing they're always doing, which I'm not saying doesn't need to be spoken to. But if we can just also look at that kernel, everyone has a speciality. Everyone. Everyone. I need to focus on that. And that's a huge part of the art of communication. That if I'm going to say something to correct, I need to say it with a vision that also acknowledges their speciality. I cannot just keep going, creating a case file of what they're doing wrong. When we do that to ourselves, it's so debilitating. If we keep reciting to ourselves, I do this wrong, and trust me, we do. We've been doing it for a very long time. I do this wrong, I do that wrong, and I've got this. Imagine how you would feel. Now, if I'm thinking of someone else that way, they do this wrong, they do this wrong, they're always doing this, they're always like this. And I'm not saying it's not true. We all do have a lot of things wrong with us. But there's something special too there. I have to. It is essential. If I'm going to move anything forward, it is essential. With a team, I have to. In fact, I will rename people on the team by the speciality. I will actually rename it so that every time I look at them internally, it doesn't come through my mouth. I say, "Hi, Bob, how are you doing?" But in my mind, I'm saying, "Yeah, it's Bob, the one who is always so thoughtful in his task." I rename them in my mind because I know I have to think about that, so that when I come into communication and interaction, that attitude is there. Even if I'm giving correction, even if I'm saying, I'm not sure if you can keep doing this because it seems to be causing this effect, but it will be so light and so much easier for the soul to accept because of the vision. So it's super critical, of course, for the self. We say, look at the self through the, how does God look at me? So you've got to ask, how does God look at these people that we're calling dysfunctional? How does God look at these people that we're calling arrogant? Do you think that's all God sees? Because if you do, then he's probably only seeing that in me as well. I've got a lot of defects. That's why I want to connect to God. So he's seeing that gem underneath the pile of dirt, right? He's seeing the jewel. So I'm not saying these are easy, and I'm not saying that these feelings of frustration and don't build, but we've been given spiritual tools, and I've got to work with them. I've got to find a way to work with them. So it's extremely thought-provoking, and we're extremely over time. So we get 1 second. I'm so sorry. But look what you unlaunched, Emma. Is this wonderful conversation that we'll have to continue.
I like the idea of renaming.
Yeah, I rename everyone. It's a deep,
I really love it.
Yeah, it's a deep tradition in indigenous cultures. They give what we call attributive names. So I remember the general manager of one of the departments. There was different branches, and they were the general manager of one of the branches. And they work a lot with First Nations. And it's very, very rare that First Nation... Yes! Oh, I thought you were saying you have to go too, Nilu. I'm so sure you have to go. But it's very rare for First Nations to give an Indigenous name to, as we say, a white person. Very, very rare. But she had developed this incredible relationship with. So they had a naming ceremony. I think they called her White Horse Woman. I think was the name they granted her. White Horse, beautiful name. So they renamed her, and it's very common in many cultures. But I feel it's a memorial of the way we used to live. That whenever we met someone, we wouldn't see the body. We'd feel the vibration of the being. It's like children. Children are very sensitive to the vibration. They'll be drawn to one stranger and cautious because no matter what they look like, because of the vibration. So it's renaming. I do all the time. I love it. And Hema,
I will do
absolutely.
that.
We all have very interesting people in our lives. I totally know where
Yeah.
you're coming from. And yes, definitely we have to pull out all the spiritual tricks we can so that we maintain our own dignity, and hopefully we can
Right.
deal with others.
Correct.
But this deserves a lot more conversation. Absolutely. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll continue it as we move forward.
NSG maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Anyways,
Thank
we'll
you.
take a second.
We should do an episode on that, how to on the
skip.
relationships. We all
Play.
need it. Yeah. Hema Bahan, my only tip is just be little older sister and loving to the young girl because she
I
needs
have
a lot
been-
of attention.
I have
It's
been
all
doing
of
with
for
those
attention seeking. Huh?
Hema's very
That's
loving.
correct. That's
Hema's
correct.
very
Yeah.
loving.
No, sometimes, it's not like sometimes we have our own moments as well, right? Because like you have 10 different deliverable to complete by 4:00 and he's sitting on your nerve and then saying this and that and all. And we are just trying to understand, like, do you understand my position?
Yeah.
What you want to prove? Yes, I said, yeah, that is correct. My apology now. You want me to hang or what? Tell me.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just getting, but it's not good. I know. I need to work a lot on myself.
I mean, from what you described, I can appreciate a lot of the dynamics that you're working with, and it does require.
And everybody knows, Judy Ben, that I am working with the toughest team.
Yeah.
And one more member was added who is tougher. Right?
Then you must be a very powerful soul.
Who?
You're a very powerful soul.
I don't know. Everybody. Somebody said poor
into this.
My manager says poor Hema. She's with the most difficult projects and most difficult project team member.
I was talking to this young girl the other day, really young, like 20s, and she was made moderator for this really intense panel. Like I was like, oh my gosh, wow. And she was even saying offline, I'm going to have to pray to God so much. I'm not sure I can get through this. And all I could say is, you know what? Life does not ever give you more than you can handle. So, yeah, sometimes it really feels like it's pushing us against the wall and we're like, oh, I'm hanging on by my fingernails here. But there's reasons that we land up in these scenarios. So I love what's going on in the chat. It's awesome. Anyways, I'd love to stay with you all afternoon. You'd all have to go get some tea. If anyone's watching this actually, I don't think anyone will watch the recording this long. So anyways, a moment of reflection, if that's okay. My day-to-day life is so much about mining for diamonds. The first diamond I mine for is the self. To experience myself as that jewel of light, like a diamond. How precious the self is. And from that stage, I move through the day with what we call the third eye wide open. The one that can see beneath the surface, can see the invisible. can see the soul underneath all those layers, the layers of life experiences, the layers of insecurity that can really accentuate that ego. Underneath all those layers, seeing that vulnerable, delicate jewel, the soul. My whole day is mining for diamonds. Om Shanti. Thank you so much for
Om
hanging in there.
Shanti. Thank you, Judy Ben, Nora Ben.